Welcome to today's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Hugh Swandel, President of Meridian One Cap. Hugh, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, you're welcome. It's good to see you.
No, absolutely, man. And thank you for being our first Canadian Fireside person. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I'm proud to be the first Canadian Fireside person.
So, Hugh, for those people that might not be familiar with you in your tenure in equipment finance, you mind just kind of talking about your experience to date?
Sure. I started working in the business as a summer student. All of us don't choose to, run forward into commercial equipment finance as our career path. But I was a summer student at an early stage equipment finance company in Winnipeg, Manitoba. CWB National is its current name. At that time, it was National Leasing. And I had a great experience there. Worked for 10 years. I would say I had a different job every year because of tremendous growth, really interesting. It sort of, got to be routine for me, and I was looking for a new challenge. I tell this story. I moved to Vancouver. I got hired to run a startup company in 1999. So came out here with my family. At that time, my kids were really young, and it was going really well. And we raised a new venture round. We made an acquisition. I bought a house in Vancouver, and lo and behold, 9/11 happened, and that really set the economy back. And our venture was, ahead of its time. And so I went back to Winnipeg with my tail between my legs, and accidentally started consulting. Who knew me, knew I had a diverse range of experiences, asked if I could help with this or that. I said, well, I don't really know too much about that. And they would say, well, you know more than we do. And oddly enough, that turned into an 18-year run of consulting, 10 years on my own and about 10 years with the Alta Group. And I joined the Alta Group after the credit crisis years. I wanted to be affiliated with a global brand, and was doing business in Canada and the US at the time, and just felt right to join that group. And that was extremely interesting. I like change, and you got to see a variety of equipment finance companies, all kinds of sizes and assets. And, my specialty was helping them find financing, which enabled them to grow a lot. And because I had been in the business when they were growing, I was sort of like a secondary executive who could advise them on growth strategy, which would lead to the sale of the business, and did a bit of M&A work. And flash forward, I was consulting to this company, and they asked if I would be interested in a leadership role. And, the funny closing to that story is I moved back to Vancouver with my wife. My daughter was already living here. My son's still back in Winnipeg. And we'd been here for 3 months, and the pandemic hit. So for those people in Vancouver, it's not my fault, but my timing is not that good with this market.
Well, if for some reason you move somewhere else, maybe they're not going to allow you back at the airport.
Yeah, I better stay this time.
That's great. So, from a weather perspective, no offense, Kim and the rest of the folks from CWB there. I think Murray's there still, right? Yeah. Nothing against Winnipeg, but I'm sure that's a little bit more of a calmer winter in Vancouver.
Yeah. I mean, Winnipeg has a lot of great things about it. I grew up there, and because of the weather, I think it builds. It's cliche, but it builds a lot of character. A lot of talented people come from there. A lot of great musicians come from Winnipeg. The Guess Who, Crash Test Dummies. There's a bunch of bands. And I always say it's because they're bored senseless with the freezing cold weather, and they are in their basement and they form a band, and they got nothing to do but practice. So they become very good. So
I did not know they were from there.
Yeah. There's a number of others. I think of off the top of my head, but it's an incredible place for the arts and music. So I don't miss the 35 below.
No, I don't. I've yet to go there. I need to go there, but I'll definitely be in the summertime.
Well, if a leasing company invites you there in January, they're really trying to tell you something. If they invite you there in July, you know they want to do business with you.
It's note to self. So tell us a little bit more about Meridian One Cap, if you don't mind, Hugh.
Sure. Meridian One Cap's one of a small group, probably 4 or 5 Canadian equipment finance companies that specialize in small ticket, so under 250,000. And there's about 5 companies of this size. We have over $1 billion of portfolio, and we originate a significant portion of the business. All Canadian leasing companies of that size have heavy exposure to construction and transportation assets, as do we. And we're good at a few things. We're really good at major account programs, so working with manufacturers and helping them optimize their marketing spend on finance-related initiatives. And the company is really, I think, hitting its stride. We're kind of retooling and rejuvenating the organization over the last 2-3 years, and our timing's very good. COVID was awful, but it gave us an opportunity to really focus on tending to any weakness that the organization had and making sure we were well equipped to accelerate as the economy recovers.
Kind of buttoning down the hatches, taking care of everything there. That's great. So from the oil perspective, with all the stuff going on, the construction portfolio kind of taking a little beating on that one, or?
Yeah, in boom times, the Alberta segment of Canada can contribute, as much as 15 to 20% of commercial equipment financing opportunity. And but when it's a bust cycle, I've seen 3 or 4 boom and busts in the Alberta economy in my career.
Right.
So everybody has exposure to it, some more than others. We don't focus a lot of effort on oil and gas production. They're too specialized in our opinion. But whatever equipment finance company it is, you have exposure to the oil and gas industry because there's so many businesses that service it from a construction and transport perspective. So that, Canada's a commodity-based economy. Oil and gas is very important, but so is the mining sector. Because of COVID, there's 2 phases to the recovery. One is just the governments, both in Canada and the US, have been pumping money in to support individuals, the small, medium-sized business community, but also all the people who suffered loss of jobs, et cetera. That relief phase will move into infrastructure spend phase, where there's a lot more capital going into the economy for infrastructure projects, bridges, roads, repairs. That phase is, in my opinion, just starting, and we've heard those spends announced. And that's usually very good for the equipment finance space. It fuels a lot of demand for equipment.
And then, as far as like your office that you're in, I guess we'll stick to on the pandemic for a little bit. Like, was that a new office that you guys built?
No, it's kind of interesting. This location is actually coming up to the end of its lease, so we've been building. But your question's timely because due to COVID, our employees transitioned very well to working from home. Right. Our efficiency numbers stayed on track, and in a lot of departments they actually improved. And the surveys we do of our people, they really appreciate the extra time where they're not commuting to and from the building. So our move, we moved in August of this year, and we're building more of what we call a collaboration center. So smaller footprint. Staff don't really own a desk in that location. They come in, work together for a couple of days in their team. So it might be customer service or funding. And when they're in the office, they'll kind of do the old, how do you do this, and collaborate and get better at their jobs. And then you go back to this world where we're constantly on camera. We use Microsoft Teams, and all day long, we talk to each other and get our work done that way. So I think the whole how to use an office is fundamentally going to change, and most organizations will have a smaller footprint because we have a number of staff in Montreal and Toronto. The commute times people were experiencing are ridiculous. An hour or an hour and a half on either end of the day. Now that's gone. It's really hard to pull them back into that lifestyle.
I've pre-pandemic, I would be in Toronto, the GTA area, a few times a year, and it's amazing how much traffic it takes to get downtown from the airport, and you're just like, holy crap. And then same with Vancouver, and it's one of those debates that I constantly have with people where I'm on the side, I think exactly where you're thinking, where we're not going back to the same. I think we've proven especially in this industry, but not only that, as a country, that we can transition to a hybrid approach, worst case scenario. So those days of everyone needs to be there, because I know Pennsylvania, right? You have all those companies in that area, King of Prussia, and those people would drive like 2 hours each way, and they're being just as productive working from home. Who wants to do that anymore?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Just before COVID hit, I kind of won a small victory where I was going to open an office in Burlington because our main location in Toronto is close to downtown, and a lot of staff in the equipment finance industry in Canada live out around Burlington area. Mm-hmm. So we really felt it was important to have some real estate there so that people didn't have these long commute times. And now we don't even think that way. To us, we're location agnostic. So you could work for us. My executive assistant works in Toronto, so we onboarded her earlier this year, and she does a tremendous job, and we just kind of match our schedules.
Yeah, it was a similar situation with JDR. They're very proud Indianapolis-based organization. They wanted all their execs to be there, which I understand. You're an executive role, you got to get it. However, I think this opened up their mind too, where it's like, no, obviously for specific events, yes, you need to be at the home base, but outside of that, and I think like Deb Rubin, I'm not sure if you've heard any of her stuff too, but she's on the same page too, where it's like, we're going back to something different. It's changed. I mean, it's still a handshake industry. And I get that. But my thing is, before, it's like, Hugh, you guys are going to make a software decision in my previous life, right? We're going to jump on a plane. I'm going to be in Vancouver. We're going to meet with your team. Now it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, well, let's jump on a Zoom, jump on Teams. Let's talk about it. Let's sit there and understand everything. So when we're there, maybe it's a 1 or 2, on-site close as opposed to a 3 to 5.
Yeah. So. No, it's forever going to be different for sure. And we're already gearing up. Like we think the most important piece of the move is scheduling technology. So, if you think about it, you don't manage that way traditionally, where you say like, which team is going to use the office on which days, and when are we all going to get together? And we kind of have an outdoor patio area where we can have barbecues and stuff at that location. We can bring the whole team together. But that's a different job. Like somebody has to figure out the scheduling, and you want to make sure there's enough together time for each department and for the team, the larger team.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, previously as a salesperson, the majority of my career in equipment finance has been on the sales side for a service provider. It's like you'd sit there and you'd coordinate calendars with someone, and you go back and forth and you grant upon a time. Now they have technology out there like XAI or Calendly, where you just, hey, can we get a schedule this week? And you just shoot them a link and it goes right to your calendar, and they pick a time. I want to say pre-pandemic, that was kind of considered rude or just in bad taste, because it's like, why would you like you're asking me for a meeting. You should
Yeah,
leverage
yeah,
my calendar, not. But now people are just like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
So where do
Because
you see, like, obviously, I think the CFLA, do you see that happening this year, like in person? Um,
I highly doubt it.
yeah,
And I attended the digital conference last year,
yeah,
and you know, I suffer from a short attention span, but I was really impressed with, you know, the digital format worked very well. And you know, one of the benefits for our company was because it was digital, it was much lower cost. So the registration fee was lower, and no airfare, no hotels. So we probably had, you know, normally we might send 3 people to that. I bet you we had 10 or more, and a lot of targeted individuals who we see as up and coming talent. You know, we wanted them to get exposure to the industry association, and got them to go. So again, it's for sure different.
yeah,
It's tough on the association because it's a big revenue source, but done well, I think these events will be, you know, very positive in a different way. There's no substitute for getting together with physically with all the colleagues, and I miss that.
right.
You know, I enjoyed that part of the industry and have made an enormous number of contacts over the decades, at trade meetings, ELFA, CFLA,
Yeah,
you know, all of them. You and I have met many times with a number of them.
yeah, yeah. No, and that's kind of one of those things where because more of those people can be involved, it's the double-edged sword. I, like you, have a short attention span. I was on there. I thought they had some really good speakers, and then towards the end of the day, you're just kind of like, okay, now I need to get back to my email. And when you're on site, like in front of people, you can't really do that. But where I'm kind of wondering is maybe these trade associations will do hybrids
Yeah.
in the future so they can keep those people who, and I get there's a cost. What is it, like 5 grand probably a person between travel, hotel, and everything else? What do you do to keep those people that can't go to those things but should be, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
be curious to see how that plays out. I think the ELFA is still targeting their stuff in late September. Um, but obviously they don't really know what's going on. But I
Yeah,
believe
well, for
everything.
us, you know, as Canadians, there is a trade show coming off in Vegas, but we're not allowed to cross the border. Like our border is closed to Americans coming in and Canadians going out unless you're deemed an essential service. So even if we wanted to attend some things, you know, until those restrictions are lifted, we can't. And you know, now in Canada, we are saying we're in the third wave of the with the variants that are in place. You know, like the U.S., we're trying to vaccinate as fast as possible, but we're not out of this yet. And you know, if you look over at Europe, they relaxed a little too much in the third wave, and they're shutting down again. You know, so it's we'll look back on this one. You know, I thought the worst thing that could ever happen was the liquidity crisis, 2008, 2010. Just in terms of impact on the industry and threat to the industry, it spurred a lot of M&A activity. This cycle, it's not so much about the damage to our industry. It's just this fundamental shift in how we think and work and interact. It's shocking. I mean, you couldn't write a movie script and get somebody to buy it about what's happening.
No, I get it, and I sit there, and it's like you read one thing, and then you read something else, and it totally contradicts it, and you're just like, okay, I don't know what to think. All I know is I am eager to, like we've met at several trade shows, like you said, eager to reconnect with colleagues whenever that moment happens.
Yeah, you learn so much in person. You know, sometimes I've learned things, or as a consultant, you know, found a business, you know, sharing a cab to an airport from one of the conferences. It's just amazing what human interaction and casual discussion can lead to.
Now, is there, I guess, just shifting away from the pandemic, So you see a lot of the bank consolidation that's happening in the States, right? Or not just banks, but just organizations in general with mergers. Is that happening up in Canada too? And do you see any of that stuff?
Yeah, when I had time, I wrote an article for the Journal of Equipment Finance called "Is Competition Dying in the Canadian Industry?" And that was, I think 2017, 2018. And it really was about this shift from a very entrepreneurial culture of independent finance companies that had matured over time. And I would say in part due to the liquidity crisis, they were all acquired by deposit-taking financial institutions. And what resulted was a lot of margin compression, a lot of consolidation, a market share. And the business is different now. Like you are competing with FIs, and I would say the independents by their nature have had to become more niche. And before, the banks kind of looked upon equipment finance and said, kind of interesting, but not really our cup of tea. And now they think they invented it, but it was really the private independent guys who were the entrepreneurs. And there's independents now who are doing some really interesting things in the market. They might not have the market share yet, but they're probably the threat to financial institutions who generally become complacent and want things their way. The fintechs and the digitization of the market, that happens faster in independent finance companies than with institutions. So we have an eye on that segment. We're impressed with some of the things that are happening and want to be partners with those companies.
That's great. So majority of people, not majority, I want to say that I've been talking on here went from a financial institution, went from an EF company to become their own consultant, or to even go to like the Alta group or another organization. Yeah. So one thing I always appreciate about you, being friends with you on Facebook, was anytime you travel to a hotel, you'd see like a photo, right? Like room with a view. And obviously that doesn't happen that much anymore when you're not constantly, well, pandemic aside. So what's that like for you, Hugh? Were you maybe working on 5 or 6 projects at a time, multiple different things going on, and now you're leading a finance organization?
Yeah, so I when I first left National Leasing, I bet you for 5 years after that, people say, what do you miss? And I would always say, I miss the people, and when you're consulting, you get interaction with people, but usually a couple of days where you go and you plunk yourself down and work on the scope of work and what has to be done. And then you go away and you do the work and you connect back with your client remotely. And, after 18 years of doing that, this opportunity, it was a rare combination of events. I was consulting to this organization, contributing more and more of my time. Everything that was a problem in the company lined up extremely well with my experience and knowledge. And I'm in the back 9 of my career, so the opportunity to lead an organization that I felt needed change, I was never going to get that opportunity again. And as much as it's rare to see a consultant go in and run a company, it's very rare to see a company hire a consultant to become the person running. And so I had a lot of respect for them taking a gamble on me. And I think it was because we did have this solid rapport through a long consulting contract that we both confidently moved it forward. So I really like it. The team of people, one of the benefits of working with an organization is you have resource behind you. So when you want to tackle a problem that you really believe can be solved, you can rally human talent and investment dollars and put it to work. And, you get to see the full cycle. You fix the problem and you're around after it's fixed. When you're a consultant, you go in, you do your job, you leave, and you're never there for the upside. You never, the company will invite you back later and explain the results and how it did, but you're not part of that team. So I'm enjoying it a lot. It's revitalizing.
Well, and obviously that's a testament to who you are as a consultant. If the company that you were working on wants to hire you to lead their organization, that means you did a good job too. So
Yeah, we would hope.
So just I've always been asking questions to people here. So a little fun fact about yourself, Hugh. Like, what do you like to do outside of equipment finance?
Oh, outside of equipment finance, yeah. I mean, these days it's pretty dull. I walk my dogs and watch Netflix. But all of my life, I've had. I'm not a musician. I'll start by saying that. But I've had a relationship with some very talented friends of mine in the band, and I've always kept active in the music business in one way or another. They would record on a regular basis, and I would go and spend time with these guys. And for a number of years within the industry, I would host a charity concert every year in memory of a friend of mine who passed away from PTSD. And every leasing company I phoned would donate money, and we would cover all the operating costs of the event and then donate the money to different PTSD charities. That's kind of, I don't know if it's a fun fact, but it kind of was that balance between work and doing something else on the side that brought me a lot of pleasure.
No, and thanks for sharing that. And then, so of all the different Canadian finance organizations, Hugh, why Meridian One Cap?
Well, it was that situation where, we both got to try before we buy. And I knew what the problems were. I knew what the culture of leadership was at the parent company, and had a lot of confidence that we had a shared vision for what needed to be done, and that there was a willingness to work together to address that. To be honest, large institutions tend to bother me. They can be very bureaucratic. This one's kind of a rarity. They're really built to accommodate entrepreneurship and to share resource. So whatever area of weakness we have, we can pick up that talent pool from the larger entities, marketing team, IT team, treasury team. And that doesn't always work very well. Right. And it works really well here. And that's been a real positive surprise for me.
That's great. That's great. And I'm excited to see what the future brings for your organization. And, hopefully our paths will cross sometime this year. Maybe by October for the ELFA annual. I'm assuming if the borders are open, maybe you'd come down, as long as you're not, trapped in quarantine when you go back, or maybe they won't let you back in.
I'm embarrassed to say, but where's the location supposed to be for the ELFA?
San Antonio.
Oh yeah. So we've been down there before. San Antonio is always fun.
So they actually moved. So the funding conference they pushed back to the end of April. I'm sorry. It's typically been in April. They pushed it back to the end of September, in hope of being able to do that. So.
Yeah, well, my phone reminded me this month of how I'm usually in New York at the
IMN conference. Yeah, the Time Hop app that I have. You sit there and it's like all these things, and it's really depressing. Like the last year, where you're sitting there and it's like, oh, yeah, I ate sushi.
Yeah, well,
every time I was in New York for the last 6 years. That's great.
That room with a view is actually usually interesting compared to most of my room with a view posts, which are of a freeway outside of a
or you sit there and you see like a wall, right? Because you're in some New York hotel and it's like, oh, look, an AC unit. Oh, a wall. Oh, there's a person right there.
Yeah, too true.
All right, Hugh. Well, thanks again for taking the time, to talk about yourself and Meridian One Cap, and look forward to seeing you in person later this year, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Great. Thanks very much.